and a beginning. A seaport that has boomed and grown old. A city with 80,000 houses unfit to live in, and an unlimited ambition.
Liverpool today is very much run down and due for renewal. 2/3 of the city centre and 1/3 of the whole of the city must be renewed by the turn of the century. This represents the largest urban renewal program of any city in the country.
Look who's coming down the street, Moreno Connie, yes, she's been married twice before.
These children will be the last generation to grow up in the old Liverpool, and perhaps the last to inherit the tradition of the singing Welsh and the joking Irish that has made this grimy port the liveliest city in Britain.
There always has been a sense of rhythm and singing in Liverpool, as long as I've been round the scene anyway. We used to sing in pubs, and in those days you weren't allowed to sing in public houses by law, and I think the Liverpool people decided that they'd be sort of cocking a snook at the authorities if they really belted out with their singing.
But of course these people here, they've had largely to make their own enjoyment. And one natural way of enjoying yourself is to sing. They are the secret people, I think, that Chesterton mentioned in his poem. There are no folk in the whole world so helpless or so wise. There is hunger in our bellies. There is laughter in our eyes. That's not true now of the hunger, but there's still the laughter in the eyes of these people around here and in their hearts.
Years ago, there used to be a lot of unemployment, as you know, in Liverpool. Chaps used to stand on the corner streets. They had nothing to do, and they used to crack jokes amongst themselves. Now, they formed these various bands. Now, a lot of them, at the time, they couldn't even read the Liverpool Echo, let alone read music. Well, they joined these bands, and the tutors, of which there was quite a lot, they taught these men how to read music, and music is wonderful.
In my Liverpool home, in my Liverpool home, we speak with an accent exceedingly rare. Meet under a statue exceedingly bare. If you want a cathedral, we've got one to spare. Tell me where. In my Liverpool home. I was born in Liverpool, down by the docks. My religion was Catholic, occupation hard knock. At stealing from lorries I was adept, and under old overcoats each night I slept. In my Liverpool home. Take the roof off now. In my Liverpool home, we speak with an accent exceedingly rare. Meet under a statue exceedingly bare. If you want a cathedral, we've got one to spare. In my Liverpool home.
Yes, we do have a huge company of comedians who come from Liverpool and have come from Liverpool. People like Arthur Askey, Ted Ray, Norman Vaughan, Billy Matchett, Rob Wilton, Tommy Handley. Somebody once said you have to be a comedian to come from Liverpool. I suppose that is true. In fact, everybody in Liverpool is a comedian because they're always telling gags, they're always telling jokes about our own particular Liverpool characters, Pat and Mick and Icky the Fire Bobby. And everybody in Liverpool seems to have this great sense of fun.
So there was another instance where we were outside the Glaston Gate and the men sitting around. It was a very hot day and there's a fella, he's selling corn cure. So he's shouting out, has anyone here got a corn? Well, my mate had no corn, but he steps forward for a bit of devilment. And the fella says to him, you got a corn? He said, yeah. He said, how long have you had the corn? He said, 15 years. So he said, okay. He said, step over here, sir. So my mate started to take his boots off. And this fella said, I was selling a corn cure. Don't take your boots off. You don't need to take your boots off here. He said, this stuff I've got goes through leather. So anyhow, this fella fell for it. And he said, split your finger and mark where the corn is. So my mate done this. So he shook a bottle and rubbed it, you know, this bit of corn cure on the corn. And he said, how was that? So my mate said, after 15 years suffering, he said, I haven't got a pain. So he leaned over to my mate, because all the men's around, you see, he wants to sell his corn cure. And he said to my mate, I'll give you 5 shillings, keep it up, say after. So my mate said, give me the 5 shilling now. So he slipped him the 5 shilling, and the men must have thought that he was buying 2 bottles, you know. Anyhow, everyone bought them. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when my mate was having a drink of tea in the canteen, the leather of his boots started to swell, they were falling off him. So that must have been terrible stuff. That fellow was curing corn with, if it goes through leather.
Liverpool, the second port of the Commonwealth, plans to spend £65 million in expanding its docks. The port already employs 30,000 people, 13,000 of them dockers. They handle 26 million tonnes of cargo a year.
When me and me mates we left our school, there wasn't much work in Liverpool. We went to the docks again and again, but they don't start lads, they only want men. Come back when you're 21, lad. So I joined me dad and my granddad too, working at Gladstone Gate number 2. The overtime's gear and I've got a good pen, and I get along fine with the rest of the men. There are a gay lot of fellas down there. We talk of politics and the bomb, the unions and the things they've done, religion and the scales of pay, conditions as they are today. Not like the bad old days. Me granddad had to work and sweat all the hours that he could get, but now machines have come to stay, there's more time off and better pay, so they say.
The wages, I think personally, are nothing like what they should be. Our flat rate is just over £10, and some of the work is very arduous. That's providing you go to work. There are times, of course, when you don't get a job, when you have to go to the control and prove attendance, to prove that you are looking for work. Looking for work in itself is quite a problem in the control. See, if the control is crowded, the boss is trying to hire men, it's pandemonium, and you could get injured even trying to get to work.
Well, normally our time for starting is 8 o'clock in the morning, and we work till 7 at night, with an hour's break for lunch. After we've been hired from the pen, we get sent to a certain job. It depends on what the job is. For example, we may go to a fridge ship, which, as you probably know, is a refrigerated cargo. The hold, when we go down into it, will be freezing cold. So it's obvious we can't stay down there all day. So we're entitled to a break of an hour, meaning to say one lot of men go up and thaw out while the other men work away in the fridge.
The welt is termed on the dock as what other people call a tea break. Now, the tea break at the dock is definitely agreed, maybe abused. I'm one of the biggest offenders. I've abused as much as anybody. But the reason is, as I said before, I didn't have an incentive. So therefore, the men today, they're just playing on it because they're not getting a decent week's wages for the hours that they're putting in.
There's been criticisms of our men for leaving the job, working what they call the welt, which means in effect that parts of the gang leave the job and maybe hang around the shed, maybe in a canteen, possibly having a drink, but means that their mates are doing their work for them, which means in effect that 4 men are doing 8 men's work. This can only operate in a job that is not too busy. If you got to a ship like the Ryesdale over the road here, you'd be forced to have all the men on because it's a busy job, the cargo would be coming in quick, and the men for their own benefit would see that the 8 men were working and there would be no one leaving the job. And they would get some bonus out of it, so they say, well, it's worthwhile. We'll all work, we'll have a go because we get something out of it. But in other circumstances where they know they're going to get no money out of the job, they say, well, we're going to have it as easy as we can.
I've seen the time when a man had a dispute over maybe 6 or 7 sectors, like, whatever the conditions were. And there used to be 1 man out, all out them days. And we stood together. And I've seen men with families, maybe anything up to 13 kiddies. And they stood just solid. And I was proud to work with them men. And I'd be just as proud to see some of their ancestors coming up now, or whatever they call them, their sons or whatever it is, come up and reach the peak that their fathers and their grandfathers stood by. That's all I want to see at the dock, is the men standing back together.
Whilst we're working down the hold, the main man on the job is the signaller. He is a man over the hatch who passes the word to the cranes to tell when it's safe to take the stuff down the hatch. Our life is in his hands. There's lots of accidents at the dock, broken fingers, broken arms, and of course the usual industrial sicknesses of bronchitis, coughing and everything else.
I reckon that dockers have the most hazardous job in the world. For instance, deckhand, if an undertaker knows you're a deckhand, well, he'll follow you down, because he knows quite well you've not got long to go. Now, from one end of the docks to the other, you're handling all kinds of cargoes, dirty cargoes, bad cargoes. It's very bad. You jump on a bus and you've got the smell of them cargoes on the bus. You've got, for instance, we say ladies or someone coming from Waterloo going to town. As soon as the docker sits on the bus, you can hear them say, phew, you know, and you feel embarrassed. There's nothing for you to do, only sit it out.
34,000 ships a year use the port of Liverpool. Among their crews are more than 12,000 men whose homes are on Merseyside.
Johnny Todd, he took a notion for to cross the ocean wide, and he left his true love behind him, weeping on the Liverpool side. Johnny Todd came home from sailing, sailing on the ocean wide, for to find that his fair and false one was another sailor's bride.
One of the big difficulties about seafaring life is how badly this fits into married life. Seamen get married, of course, and then they're away. And the position of the seafarer's wife, particularly if she's a mother, is even more difficult than that of a widowed mother.
Well, my husband's been going away to sea for 20 years, and it's been a very lonely life. I've always had to make the decisions for the 5 children. Well, usually on docking day, when he gets home, we sit down for an hour drinking tea and gossiping on family, catching up on how the children are doing. And then after that, he'll start to wander around the house, go out into the back and make sure that something's still there that was there last time he was home. And he wanders into every room, quite honestly. I often think he might think I've sold something or got rid of something while he's been away. But after he's been home a few days, he gets a little bit, I'll say fed up, because that really is the word for it. And he's really glad, I think, when he's sailing. He doesn't like sailing. I won't say he's glad. He doesn't like sailing. But I think he's happy when he gets back to the ship.
I suppose it's very difficult for people ashore to get a real conception of the privations, the toughness, let's say it, of life at sea. Really, you know, they suffer more privations in normal seafaring life than does a prisoner in jail. And then add to this the whole thing, moving up and down, sideways and slopping forwards and backwards, produce conditions which, if they were reproduced ashore, would be a scandal headline in all the newspapers. These inhuman working conditions, but there you are, that's seafaring life, someone has to do it.
He has to go away to sea because financially it is better for us. For instance, when he gets his payoff, that is a lump sum we can really do something with. Having 3 children at the grammar school, you've got to have money behind you to keep them there. And that's his aim in life. The worst thing about sailing day is that we all get terribly upset. And years ago I used to sit down and cry, literally cry about sailing day. I never speak to anybody, I couldn't. I was too worried and really upset about it. And now I've had to accept the fact that it's his job. He's got to go away. The boy gets terribly upset about it. I've seen him when his father's been sailing at 8 o'clock. He's gone down to the local beach to see the ship going past, and his father doesn't like him to do that, but Ronnie likes to go down there and see the ship going by and comes back and says to me, "Well, it's gone, Mum."
Eddie well, a prince's landing stage, River Mersey, fare thee well, for I'm off to California. united we will be. It's not the leaving of Liverpool that grieves me, but me darling, when I think of thee. Fare thee well till Lower Frederick Street and St. Terrace and Park Lane, for I know that it will be some little time before I see you again. So fare thee well, my own true love, when I return united we will be. It's not the leaving of Liverpool that grieves me, but me darling, when I think of thee.
Every day at lunchtime, Herbert Balmer, the Deputy Chief Constable, takes a 4-mile walk round the docks. Once an apprentice shipwright, he served in the last of the sailing ships. He's been a policeman in Liverpool for 39 years.
In the old Liverpool, Chinatown was a well-known corner. Just on the edge of Sailor Town, really. And the houses, they were all joined together. We've raided opium dens and chased people through about 20 and 25 houses, through the cellars, through holes in the cellar walls, and on for about a quarter of a mile before we found them make their getaway into a street which was well out of Chinatown, but which was the exit point and had been well used in the past. And the Chinamen themselves, men of dry humour, law-abiding, they are law-abiding people, the Chinese. They didn't come with stories to the police, they preferred to settle their own affairs. They weren't informants. But one chap whom I prize greatly was. And as it's over 35 years ago, I can now mention it. He used to ring me up and say, Mr. Balmer, you go 16 Pitt Street, plenty much opium smoke. You go? And I say, I go. And I did go. And I'd find them smoking the opium. And I'd chase the chaps who were smoking and arrest the men who were running the joint. And that was that. A few days later, another message from him. Mr. Balmer, you go 7 Dickinson Street. Plenty much opium smoke. You go? And I say, I go. And he was always right. But it took 6 months to find out that what we were in fact doing was arresting all the competitors of the chap who was informing me of these opium dens.
Can you do the case ball? Can you do the splits? Can you do the whirly-whirly? Can you do the kicks? The Queen, she bows, the King salutes. The girls wash the dishes and the boys load the kisses, and we all shout, hooray!
Here in Everton, this great wood stretched across from here in that direction. And the people of Everton, they had the right to go into the wood and use the wood for all the things that they needed it for. Now, in the course of years, the wood was gradually cleared and you were able to farm the land where the wood had been.
The woods and fields of Everton disappeared under endless rows of terraces more than a century ago. Much of the district has been knocked down, some of it rebuilt. There, and in other central districts of Liverpool, the bulldozer and the building gangs are changing the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. For some, the change is welcome.
6 of us living in this room. We have to cook, eat and sleep, and everything you do is in the same room. You can't even get washed unless the children are watching you. You have to eat late, go to sleep, and then it's late. It's in the middle of the night, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning when you can get a wash. There's no hot water, nothing. Everything's to be boiled and carried. And just don't get no sleep at all because my husband goes to bed early and he's moaning. When I want to sit up a bit and watch the television, he's moaning about having to get up early and the telly's making a noise and the children won't go to sleep. When you get into bed, there's other children crying, keeping you awake. Just don't get no rest at all. Might get about 2 or 3 hours good sleep. When everybody's round, they interfere, you know, they might run in and that, and then you're out with them because they've interfered with you and your husband. And you know their business, they know your business. There's just no way of happiness here at all. But then you have got the comfort of not being lonely. The people upstairs, they have got all the difficulties. Because if they want water and someone's on that toilet, they'll have to stand outside and wait. And the rain's coming down. They can't even use the toilet when the rain's raining. They have to share cookers on the land, and one cooker between two. There's always maids over who's putting the money in and who's not. And I've put a shilling in and things like that. Or she might use 2 rings and there's only 3 rings on it. You might want to have £2 and you've got to wait till she finishes to get your cooking done. Then it's 7 o'clock and your tea's ready. Or if you've got the oven on, the boat's doing roast, that's it. She might want it low and the other one might want it high. It causes a rise for nothing.
I would like to say that personally I find it very rewarding and satisfying to teach in a school here right in the centre of the city. But I don't deny that there are many problems. The children come from very overcrowded homes. About 10% of them still live with the whole family in one room. And therefore the children are given very little opportunity for good sleep at night, and they come to school the next morning tired and listless. About 15% of the children live in small houses shortly due for demolition. Not so long ago, a little boy came to school in great distress because his pet dog had been killed by a rat at the bottom of his bed that morning. Also, they have very little background knowledge. We try to take them out to parks and farms. This week, some of them saw a cow for the very first time in their lives. They have very little space for play. The tenements, where about 75% of them live, are overcrowded. The only areas where they can really play are in the car parks, in the busy city streets, or riding up and down the escalators in the city stores. Not so long ago, on a sunny day, one of the teachers looked out of the window and saw 3 little boys sitting happily having a picnic with a bottle of lemonade in the little patch of grass down there, right in the centre of Lime Street.
A lot of people get this picture of Liverpool as everybody going around with bare feet and terrible poverty and wearing shawls and playing guitars in holes in the ground, but I don't think that's Liverpool at all. If they are poor at all, it never bothers them, it never worries them. As far as I can make out, it never bothers them at all. I've seen people have the time of their lives, and I don't think they've got 2 halfpennies to rub together. They're wonderful people, they're very big-hearted people, generous people. They're very generous people. I've been to bingo halls. I've been given the pleasure, the honour, of passing over cheques for immense amounts of money to give to charities, particularly from a place, one bingo hall I'm thinking of. They give thousands of pounds to a charity for African missionaries, and I'm sure half of them wouldn't even know an African missionary if they fell over one.
People around here are very neighbourly. For instance, when there is a bereavement in a family, it's most noticeable how they'll go in and out the house and sympathising with the people who are bereaved.
There used to be a lady who was very, very good. She, if you were sick, she took your children, minded them, washed them, cleaned them, done your washing, even cooked meals for you. And when anybody died, she was in to do everything for them, you know. Well, after she died, I've done it for a few people.
Putting the sheets up and...
Putting the sheets up and
crossing.
Washing the person that was dead, maybe. But there's quite a few people in the street that do that sort of work.
Things like washing corpses and putting sheets up and that type of thing with the dead, it just doesn't appeal to me at all. I mean, I think that's for a funeral parlour, but round here, The likes of my mother and her friends, they think it's, an honour more or less to walk into, to be asked to go into anybody's house who's dead and put the sheets up and cover the mirrors and put flowers up on the wall and the cross and the candles, But that sort of thing doesn't appeal to me.
There's been a general decay in the whole area. And with slum clearance, of course, the houses become empty. And as they empty, the vandals and thieves move in to take anything that is of any value. Wrought iron fan lights of great beauty, which are ripped out. The fine, thick lead flashing is the kind of thing that these thieves and vandals want.
We don't have no peace at all around with the vandals around here. I mean, other night you're in bed, you can hear them on the roofs tightening the lead. One night, a few weeks ago, lady, she's moved now. I heard the screams of her terrible. I thought maybe she was in a fight or something, came out, she had her head out the window crying, no husband. They'd stripped the lead off and they were still there with a dog. Still there, and they were actually hanging from that hairdresser's over there, Leslie Ann, with the lead. And it wasn't for me to say who they were, because for the simple reason, if I had it done, it wouldn't have been worth living, you know what I mean? I did see some people, but it was just the backs of them. Told her the next morning.
And then it was that morning that my dad went out to Nick's, and this same two boys got hold of him, I'm against the wall, and he said, "You're nosing." My dad said, "I'm not." He's going to play with your toys, sonny. He turned around and said, "I'll screw your neck in." He said, "If you go and inform on us." Of course, she went at him with the umbrella.
Well, naturally, I mean, he's my father, he's 79, he's not a young lad. I mean, he's done his work. I mean, he's not like half of them around here standing in the corner. He's gone out to work. He's worked hard for us. And I run at him with the umbrella. I was done about screwing his neck. I said, "I'll screw your eyes." I couldn't help us in temper.
And she turned around and said to him, "No wonder the houses are no good with the likes of yous knocking around. You're making them the way they are." Of course, I seen his father and I told his father about it then. Then he come round the night time, midnight, wasn't it?
To apologise. First, of course, round then apologised when they realised how my father was an old man and we've been born and reared around here, you know.
I'm working all day just to try and earn $1. Gonna chop some wood on a pretty Eddie Holler. Well, I work for the dime just to buy a pair of shoes, but there ain't no cure for the wood chopping blues. Sometimes I wonder what we're gonna eat when we knocked all the doors off Jenkinson Street. There's a way of getting planks from a bombed house floor. If you can't get the planks, we just make with the door. If you wanna take the door, you just loosen the screws, for there ain't no cure for the wood chopping blues. When we take the floorboards from out of the house, we pass it to the fella who's standing on downs. If the coffin interferes while we're on the rob, we'll end our days on the wood chopping job. Even if the stars don't receive bad news, for there ain't no hope for the wood chopping blues. The news we receive will be far from good, cause that's the result of selling stone wool.
A few months ago, when we had our general survey, the crime in this city was the highest in its history, and in fact, the highest in the country outside the Metropolitan Police. So, we placed television cameras at vantage points along the main buildings of the city where crime was at its heaviest, and we allied the cameras to commandos, and they were joined together by radio.
Control to Bravo, over. Bravo to Control, over. Control to Bravo. 2 men acting in a suspicious manner on the corner of Hawk Street, Copses Hill. Question, please, over.
Bravo to Control, received, understood.
Another of our troubles was general hooliganism. Toughs of the city, not necessarily teddy boys, but persons in some cases who'd had a couple of drinks and what is colloquially termed as had the smell of a barmaid's apron. In other words, had had enough drink just to make them brave. And in some parts, especially the pierhead, they were terrorizing the people going for the boats over to the other side of the water. And these weren't specially Liverpool toughs and ruffians either. Some were from Birkenhead and Wallasey, but the pierhead was the meeting place. Now, we dealt with this crowd quite effectually with dogs.
A dog, in my opinion, is worth 2 or 3 policemen in this city. The hooligans in this city are frightened of the dogs. A good example of this is one constable with a dog on his own in London Road the other night came across a gang of 30, maybe more, hooligans fighting, blocking the whole of the road, holding the traffic up. People were frightened by the behaviour, but one man with his dog was able to break up this fight. The one man who persisted with his weapon was arrested and charged.
Like most big cosmopolitan cities, you get a certain rough element that just won't have anything to do with law and order. There was an instance not so long ago of a call going out to a car. A woman was drowning at the pier head. Bobby goes down there, a woman in the water. He takes his boots off, his wristwatch, dives in the water to try and save the woman. And while he was doing it, somebody, obviously a no good, stole his watch and his boots.
When an orange band marches in Liverpool, it has to get a police permit and stick to a route that avoids the denser centres of the Roman Catholic population. The Battle of the Boyne was fought in 1690. Its commemoration in the orange processions of July the 12th has often proved a meeting point between Catholic and Protestant in the streets of Liverpool.
It's still like sitting on top of a powder keg. Every policeman is on 12 hours duty on the 12th of July. Every mounted man is out. And we still keep a no man's land between sections which are predominantly Irish and sections which are predominantly orange on the line of route. And this no man's land is really stone throwing distance.
Well, there's some fun, believe me, on the 12th of July. Believe me, it's real comical and also very picturesque. Well, I remember of a time with regards to processions. As you know, we have to have police protection, which in my opinion is all wrong because, I mean, this is an English country, Protestant country, and we shouldn't require police protection. But I've actually seen people getting things thrown at them on the 12th of July, which is comical. And I've actually seen, one instance happened to me one time, coming out of Exchange Station one evening, coming home from the 12th of July. This here old lady, she stepped in the gutter, and she gave me the greatest Cassius Clay right hook you ever saw. It clouted me right in the mouth, when my mouth started to bleed. And of course I just put it down to her ignorance. Because a good Orangeman, he keeps on walking even if his head's hanging off. Because if his head's hanging off and it falls on the floor, somebody will pick it up and stick it back on again.
Down here, we're overlooked by the orange people. And when I first came here, I remember people were rather surprised when I'd go and visit the few Catholics who were up in that area. And the Protestant people seemed to be surprised that I was an ordinary sort of man. They thought I'd be wearing horns or something. And by degrees, we seemed to become very, very friendly, even with the Protestants up there. And as time has gone on, of course, a great deal of this bitterness has died down. We used to say, even with our own people, that the people who would be bitter were the ones who would die for their faith, but they wouldn't live for it. But I would say, as time has gone on and the bitterness has died down, what really seemed to be almost a death blow is that incident when Archbishop Heenan was stoned.
Well, a thing like that round here, the people just went mad. I mean, the Catholics, to a gentleman like Cardinal Heenan. Well, a thing like that, it could have caused mutiny between the Catholics and the Orange, because, I mean, there's little things that's been done, the Orange, and they've had the differences, the Catholics and the Orange, but a thing like that, I thought it was absolutely disgraceful.
A few years back, there was the Orange procession past buildings along the road.
It wasn't really supposed to pass.
It wasn't supposed to pass.
To agitate the Catholics there.
And they sort of came along this road and agitated the Catholics. Of course, they
riots.
threw everything they had at them out of their windows. There was plates of dinner, buckets of ashes, everything they could get their hands on.
It's the greatest mix-up that you have ever seen. Me father, he was orange, and me mother, she was green.
Now my father was an Ulster man, proud Protestant was he. My mother was a Catholic girl from County Cork was she. They were married in 2 churches, lived happily enough, until the day that I was born, then things got rather rough. Oh, for it's the greatest mix-up that you have ever seen. Me father, he was orange, and me mother, she was green. Well baptised by Father Riley, then rushed away by car, to be made a little Orangeman, me father's shining star. I was christened David Anthony, but yet in spite of that, to me father I was William, while me mother called me Pat. Oh, for it's the greatest mix-up that you have ever seen. Me father, he was orange, and me mother, she was green. Now with mother every Sunday morn to mass I'd proudly stroll, while later on the Orange Lodge would try to save my soul. For both sides tried to claim me, but I was smart because I'd play me flute or play me harp, depending where I was. Oh, for it's the greatest mix-up that you have ever seen. Me father, he was orange, and me mother, she was green. Now, when I'd play those rebel songs, much to my mother's joy, my father would leap up and say, "Look here, William, me boy, you've sung enough of that lot." He'd then toss me a coin. He'd make me sing of the orange flute and the heroes of the Boyne. Oh, for it's the greatest mix-up that you have ever seen. Me father, he was orange, and me mother, she was green. Now one day me ma's relations, they came to visit me. By chance me father's kinfolk, they were sitting down to tea. Well, we tried to smooth things over, but they all began to fight. And being strictly neutral, I bashed everyone in sight. Oh, for it's the greatest mix-up that you have ever seen. Me father, he was orange, and me mother, she was green. Now my parents never could agree about my type of school. My learning always done at home, no wonder I'm a fool. Well, they both passed on, God bless them, but I'm caught in between. That awful colour problem of the orange and the green. Oh, for it's the greatest mix-up that you have ever seen. Me father, he was orange, and me mother, she was green.
But new realities have come to Liverpool, remote from battles long ago, remote from the singing and the fighting and the neighbourliness of the old city. The Ford factory on the city border is the biggest of Liverpool's new industries. Its 12,000 new jobs have cut down the chronic unemployment figures. It is helping to change a way of life.
We have spent £2 million in training local people for this industry, and the major part of this expense has been on helping them to adjust psychologically to the conditions which we require, which exist in the industry. For instance, a great deal more regularity and discipline is required in the motor industry than in many of the older and more traditional industries in the Merseyside region. These workers are earning good wages, and they're enjoying a new prosperity. They're, for instance, they're buying motor cars, and they're taking continental holidays, things which they've never been able to do before. But you'll find a new motor car standing outside a poor quality house somewhere, and this is the symbol of the fact that the social pattern, social conditions in the region are not keeping up with the new industrial pattern.
The factory is close to a new estate, Speke, where many people from the city have been rehoused. There and at Kirby, thousands of decent houses have been built, but many people are reluctant to move out from the old Liverpool.
They've lived in the slums all their lives. They have their associations there, their churches, their pubs, their shops. And
It means, in many cases, when the person is perhaps 80 years old, a complete breakup of their past life. I recall the case of an elderly lady of about 80 who was the last person left in an old block of tenements. We shifted her out one night, and the next morning she was back again.
It was, during the war and before the war, tremendous privations caused by the housing difficulties. And the city council as a whole decided almost unanimously to lend itself to the creation of as many houses as was possible. This led, in the main, to the establishment of 2 estates on the perimeter of the city, one at Speke and the other at Kirby. And we in the Liverpool City Council now, having had some experience of watching these estates develop, now realise that perhaps we made the most fundamental mistake that we could have possibly made. We created on a piece of land which had been almost bulldozed flat to resemble the drawing board of the architect, a desert of houses in which people resided, which people slept, but we created at the same time estates upon which people could not, in fact, live a good life. No amenities were provided along with the houses, so that when children who had been born in the proximity of blitz sites, and whose only natural plaything had been a half brick on a blitz site, then found themselves transported to a new housing estate at Speke or Kirby, and found made available to them in very handy forms half bricks of all kinds, then naturally they followed the inclination they'd only known, the desire to throw a brick, and immediately brought down the wrath of all the local papers and good doers in the community of saying what terrible destructive children these were, that they should break windows in new housing estates, when the real truth is the community of Liverpool had in fact only given them this as their recreation.
Kirby, or the Ponderosa, it's sometimes called, Kirby, and Speke, they're great people. You know, they've come out of the town, and a lot of them wish they were back in the town, a lot of them are homesick and that, but generally speaking, they're smashing people out there, and smashing is the right word. No, they're lovely people. But, of course, people gag about them. Liverpool comics do. They say, you know, in one of these housing estates, they used to tell in one of the old housing estates, they say if you pay the rent 2 weeks on the run, the policeman comes to find out where you got the money from.
In Speke, he's been rent collecting in Speke. An adventurous man was young Willie Moran, and of yellow he'd nary a stream. Fished for shark, hunted whale, and he'd never turn tail, till he went rent collecting in Speke. Where? In Speke, till he went rent collecting in Speke. Though approach carefully plotted, our hero was spotted, and he soon found himself up the creek. Oh, they left him for dead, their arrears still in red, and that's all he collected in Speke. Well, in Speke, that's all he collected in Speke. Well, the inquest was held, and the coroner yelled, oh, my verdict is surely unique. It cannot be denied that it's plain suicide to go rent collecting in Speke. Where? In Speke, to go rent collecting in Speke.
Our friends nearly died when they found we were coming to Kirby. They said, you know, you can't possibly go there. I mean, there's so much vandalism. My husband can't leave his motorbike outside in case all the accessories are gone. There isn't a telephone for miles. You've got to go for exactly before you can find one. They've all been ripped out. Vandalism, you know. And there's people down below have rubbish emptied on them. People just don't know what the chutes are for, you know, and they seem to empty rubbish out into the streets.
We have to have the windows all caged up with heavy wire guards, and even at that, we can't protect ourselves or protect the windows anyway. We've had them smashed, the guards taken off them. And the back doors, they're always forever breaking the locks off them, and they've even set fire to it this last week, set fire to the back door.
Now, when I first went up there, I'll be honest, I think I sent away for them 100 hawthorn trees. And make no mistake, I sweated putting them in, as I thought. But unfortunately, I didn't put them in deep enough, and when I come back, they were pinched. Oh, I don't say they were pinched. I found about 20 missing, and I found over the road, a fella found them in his garden, so we just buried them up and put them back in his garden. You know what I mean? He thought they were loose, but they were my trees that he buried, you know. He had that privilege. But outside of that, I'll say this about the neighbours, that you'd say to them when I were down here, a lot of people are from the Dock Road and round this area. And as I said, rough people have brought up that road. And unfortunately, there's a bond down here that seems to lose everybody when they get new houses. I'm sorry to see that go. Now, I've seen the time even now, if a fella has a bit of a wedding, we carry on for 2 or 3 days, going to his house and out bottles, and they just carry on that road. But up in Kirby, unfortunately, we all go out there, probably myself, I'm as guilty as any of them. We go out, we put our side on, we do our gardens, and we put curtains up, and, you know, really do our best, I suppose, in many ways. But unfortunately, it's altering the way of life. And as I said, the old happy days, they're just going from Liverpool.
I wish I was back in Liverpool, Liverpool town where I was born, where there ain't no trees, no scented breeze, no fields of waving corn, but there's lots of girls with peroxide curls and the black and tan flows free, with 6 in a bed by the old pier head, and it's Liverpool town for me.
The poorer a city, the stronger are the social ties of its inhabitants, and the greater the loyalty of the people living in the city to their city. We therefore have some difficulty in rehousing all the people who would like to be rehoused in Liverpool. For instance, we require 110,000 new dwellings by the turn of the century, and yet we can only provide about 1/3 of them within the city.
Liverpool 100 years ago was built as a good city. Liverpool 100 years ago didn't build a city for everybody. It built a city for people who controlled it. Liverpool in the future must be a city for the whole of the people. It must be a city in which people can live a really decent life, in which they can commune with their neighbours and have a really good social life as well as an individual life. Liverpool, I'm convinced, is going to be a city of this type.
There were 3 ships in Liverpool Bay to me way,